The biting Churchill wind is a beast all its own. A constant roar that scours the tundra and freezes the very air you breathe. We were there for the polar bears, huddled in our massive tundra buggy, a fortress on wheels against the brutal Manitoban winter. Through my binoculars, I scanned the vast, white emptiness of the Hudson Bay ice. That's when I saw it. It wasn't a bear. It was too tall, too thin, a stark, dark line against the blinding white. It moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, hunched over something on the ice. "Hey, Dave," I nudged our guide, pointing. "What's that out there?" "Not a bear, is it?" Dave raised his own binoculars, his brow furrowing. "No, too lanky. And dark. Maybe a caribou. But what would it be doing scavenging on the sea ice?" He keyed his radio, his voice. A low crackle. "Base, this is Tundra 1. We've got a visual on an unidentified figure on the ice, approximately 2 clicks northeast. Looks like it's feeding. Could you get a better look?" A few other tourists started murmuring, their own binoculars turning towards the strange shape. The figure was gaunt, imposably so. Its limbs were like sticks, its ribs a faint washboard shadow even from this distance. It looked starved. The reply from the base was sticky ice and confused. "Tundra 1, we don't see anything on our scopes. The ice is clear in that sector." Dave frowned. "That's impossible." "It's right there." He decided to move us closer. The buggy groaned to life, its huge tires crunching over the packed snow and ice. We rumbled forward, our collective gaze fixed on the creature. But something was wrong. The closer we got, the farther away it seemed. It was a bizarre optical illusion. The figure remained a distant, skeletal silhouette, never growing larger, never getting clearer. It was like we were driving on a treadmill, the landscape scrolling past, but our destination forever out of reach. A woman behind me gasped. "It's looking at us." And it was. The figure had straightened up. Even from that impossible distance, I felt its gaze. There was no face to see, just a sense of ancient, malevolent awareness drilling into us. It wasn't an animal. An animal would flee or posture. This thing just watched. The cold deeper than the Arctic air settled in the buggy. This wasn't just strange, it was profoundly wrong. The creature then did something that made my blood run cold. It raised a long, spindly arm and waved. A slow, deliberate motion. Not a greeting, but a beckoning, an invitation out onto the ice. "Okay, that's it," Dave said, his voice tight. "We're turning back." He didn't need to convince anyone. The mood in the buggy had shifted from curious to terrified. As he swung the vehicle around, I kept my binoculars trained on the figure. It didn't move. It just stood there, a frozen stickman in the vastness, watching us retreat. Back at the lodge, the story spread like wildfire. The locals, mostly Inuit and First Nations people, listened with grim, knowing faces. They didn't offer explanations, but their silence was heavy. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of the waving, skeletal figure was burned into my mind. I stared out my window at the swirling snow in the eerie glow of the aurora. Around 2 a.m., I heard it. A faint scratching sound at the window pane. My heart hammered against my ribs. I'm on the 2nd floor. There's nothing out there but a sheer drop to the frozen ground. Slowly, I peeled back the curtain. Pressed against the glass, wreathed in frost and shadow, was a face. It was long and narrow, like a horse's skull. With sunken, hollow sockets that held a dim, flickering light, like dying embers. Its skin was the color of old bruises, stretched tight over bone. A lipless mouth gaped open, revealing rows of yellowed, pointed teeth, and the smell, even through the thick glass. The stench of decay and freezer burn filled my room. It was the thing from the ice. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My throat was locked in ice. We just stared at each other for a timeless moment, its head tilted, a gesture of morbid curiosity, and one of its long, twig-like fingers, tipped with a blackened claw, tapped lightly on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Tuppet knew I was there. It had followed me. It had crossed the impossible distance. The stories I'd dismissed as folklore, the local legends of the Churchill area, weren't just stories. They spoke of a spirit of the frozen wastes, a being born of starvation and winter madness, an eternal hunger on the wind. They called it the Wendigo. The thing's jaw unhinged, impossibly wide, and a sound came from it. Not a roar, but a dry, rattling whisper that sounded like wind whistling through bare bones. It was a mimicry of a human voice, a distorted echo of every plea for help it had ever heard. It whispered my name. I don't know how it knew my name. I slammed the curtain shut and scrambled back from the window, my body trembling uncontrollably. I huddled in the corner of the room, listening to the gentle, rhythmic tapping on the glass that went on for what felt like hours. It was a patient sound, a hungry sound. The next morning, I was the first one at the airstrip, paying an exorbitant amount for a one-way ticket south. I didn't care where, just away. As the small plane took off, I looked down at the endless expanse of white. The tundra was pristine, empty. There was no sign of the tundra buggy tracks, no sign of the lodge, just a blank, unforgiving canvas. And for a fleeting second, just as we banked over the bay, Primera SAW, a tiny dark speck on the ice below. It was standing perfectly still, looking up. I know it saw me. I know it's still out there, in the cold, white emptiness, waiting. Because the hunger of a Wendigo is eternal, and sometimes, when the winter wind howls just right, I can still hear it whispering my name. Thanks for listening, and if you ever find yourself in the far north, stay in the light, and never, ever answer a voice on the wind. Follow 4 more stories from the dark. The Chequameganicolette National Forest in Wisconsin is a vast, ancient wilderness. For centuries, loggers have carved a living from its dense timber, but some stories, buried deep in the forest floor, are better left undisturbed. This is one of them. It was late autumn when a crew of modern loggers stumbled upon something impossible. Deep within an uncharted section of the forest, they found a 19th century logging camp. It wasn't a ruin. It was pristine. The log cabins stood strong against the elements, the doors slightly ajar. Axes were leaned against chopping blocks, their blades still sharp. Saws were laid across half-cut logs. Inside the cookhouse, tin plates and cups were set on a long wooden table, as if the loggers had just stepped out for a moment. It was a ghost camp, frozen in time, waiting for its inhabitants to return. Take crew boss, a man named Marcus, felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. Ekadedidin, and soon, a team of historians and archaeologists arrived, buzzing with excitement. They documented everything. The camp, they determined, was abandoned around 1888. The most peculiar discovery was the camp's journal, found on the foreman's desk. The entries started normally, detailing daily logging operations, weather, and supplies. But then, the tone began to change. The foreman wrote of a biting hunger that swept through the camp. A hunger that food couldn't satisfy. Men grew gaunt and pale, their eyes wide with a desperate, animalistic craving. Fights broke out over rations, even though supplies were plentiful. They became paranoid, whispering about the wind, carrying a voice that promised to end their gnawing emptiness. The final entry was almost illegible, the handwriting a frantic scrawl. It spoke of a long-limbed shadow that stalked the edges of the camp at dusk. It was tall, impossibly thin, with grayish skin stretched tight over its bones. The foreman wrote that the men weren't just hungry anymore. They were becoming something else. He described one of his best loggers, a man named Thomas, whose teeth had grown long and yellow, his fingernails like claws. Thomas would stare into the forest for hours, muttering about the taste of raw meat. The last sentence in the journal was chilling. The hunger has a name. It walks on 2 legs. God save us. It's inside us now. It's calling them from the trees. After that, the journal went silent. The academic team tried to rationalize it. Mass hysteria, contaminated food, some unknown disease. But Marcus, the logger who found the camp, knew better. He'd grown up with the old stories, the ones the elders told around crackling fires. Stories of the Wendigo, the spirit of insatiable hunger, the eternal famine. He knew the camp wasn't just abandoned, it was cozy. As the research team packed up their findings for the day, a young archaeologist named Ben decided to stay a little longer. He wanted to get some twilight shots at the camp, as the sun dipped below the tree line, casting long skeletal shadows. The forest grew unnervingly quiet. Even the birds and insects fell silent. Ben was adjusting his camera when he heard it, a faint whisper on the wind, a sibilant sound that seemed to slither through the trees. It sounded like his name. Ben. He froze, his heart pounding against his ribs. He told himself it was just the wind, his imagination running wild after reading the journal. He turned back to his camera, but then he heard a twig snap behind him. He spun around. Standing at the edge of the clearing, partially obscured by the deepening gloom, was a figure. It was unnaturally tall and emaciated, its limbs long and stick-like. Its head was crowned with what looked like antlers, but they were jagged, like broken branches. 2 pinpricks of icy blue light glowed where its eyes should be. It didn't move. It just watched him. A wave of primal fear washed over Ben. He couldn't scream. He couldn't move. He was paralyzed. The air grew frigid, and he could see his breath misting in front of him. Then, a new sensation began to creep in, starting from the pit of his stomach. Annoying, ravenous hunger. It was more intense than any hunger he had ever known. He felt his stomach clench in a painful knot, and his mind was suddenly filled with grotesque images of tearing flesh. He felt a desperate urge to run, not away from the creature, but towards it. The thing tilted its head, and a dry, rasping sound echoed through the forest, a grotesque imitation of a human voice. "So hungry," it whispered, the sound coming from all directions at once. Ben finally broke free from his paralysis. He scrambled backward, falling over a log, and crab walked away, never taking his eyes off the monstrous figure. He grabbed his radio, his fingers fumbling with the buttons. "Marcus, Comain. Marcus," he yelled, his voice cracking with terror. "It's here. It's real. It's in the camp." The radio crackled back to life. "Ben? What is it? What's happening?" It was Marcus's voice, strained with worry. Before Ben could answer, the creature moved. It didn't run. It flowed through the trees like smoke, covering the distance in an instant. One moment, it was at the edge of the forest. The next, it was looming over him. He saw its face then, a gaunt, skeletal mask of gray skin, with a lipless mouth stretched into a horrifying grin, revealing rows of pointed, yellow teeth. The stench of decay and frozen earth filled his nostrils. Marcus and the others heard Ben scream over the radio, a short, sharp cry that was abruptly cut off. Then, there was only static. They raced back to the camp, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. They found Ben's camera on the ground, its lens shattered. They found his radio lying in the dirt, but Ben was gone. There was no sign of a struggle, no tracks other than their own. It was as if the forest had simply swallowed him whole. They searched for days, but nothing was ever found. The academic team packed up and left, their scientific curiosity replaced by a deep, unspoken fear. The logging company officially declared the area unsafe and sealed it off, forbidding anyone from entering. The story was hushed up, dismissed as a tragic accident, a young man lost in the wilderness. But Marcus knew the truth. He knew that the hunger that consumed the loggers in 1888 was still there, waiting in the silent woods. He knew that the camp wasn't a historical site. It was a trap, a place where the Wendigo waits for new souls to feed its endless craving. The tools are still laid out. The plates are still set on the table, not for the loggers who vanished a century ago, but for the next unfortunate souls who stumble upon the camp, drawn in by a whisper on the wind and a hunger that can never be filled. The forest keeps its secrets, and sometimes those secrets are hungry. If you ever find yourself in the Chequameganakalet National Forest and you feel a sudden, gnawing emptiness inside you, a hunger that no food can satisfy, don't ignore it. Run. Because the Wendigo is not just a story, and it's always hungry. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales from the dark corners of the world. Stay safe out there. Have you ever heard a silence so loud it screams? I have. It wasn't in a library or a desolate desert. It was deep within the Turtle Mountains of North Dakota, a place where the trees whisper ancient secrets, and the wind carries more than just the chill of the north. My story begins with a hunting trip, a tradition my grandfather, my father, and I had cherished for years. But this time something was different. The forest felt wrong. We set up camp near a small, unnamed lake, the water still and dark like polished obsidian. The first night was unnerving. The usual chorus of crickets and frogs was completely absent. All we could hear was the crackle of our fire and the rustling of leaves that sounded less like the wind and more like something heavy dragging itself through the underbrush just beyond the firelight. My father, a man who feared nothing, kept his rifle closer than usual that night. He told us stories of the old lands, of spirits that walked the woods. He never used the name, but we knew what he was talking about. A Wendigo. The second day, the unease grew. We found tracks, huge, misshapen prints in the soft earth that were neither human nor animal. They were elongated, with what looked like claw marks gouging the dirt. We followed them for a while, a morbid curiosity pulling us deeper into the woods. The tracks led us to a clearing where we found a deer, or what was left of it. It was gruesome. The carcass was torn apart, but not in a way a bear or a wolf would do it. It was methodical. And what was stranger, there were no signs of a struggle. No scattered fur, no blood trail. It was as if the deer had simply stood there and allowed itself to be devoured. My grandfather, a man of few words and deep-rooted native beliefs, looked pale. He pointed to the trees surrounding the clearing. Every single one had deep, vertical scratches running up the bark, some as high as 15 feet off the ground. "Hey! Torned!" To us, his voice, a low whisper. "We leave. Now." There was no arguing with the terror in his eyes. We packed up our camp in a hurried silence, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of blood orange and bruised purple. The forest was watching us. I could feel it. A cold, hungry gaze that seemed to follow our every move. As we made our way back towards the trail, the sun dipped below the horizon, plunging the forest into a thick, inky blackness. Our flashlights cut feeble beams through the oppressive dark, and then we heard it. Or rather, we didn't. The silence returned, absolute and suffocating. Not a single sound. It was as if the entire forest was holding its breath. And in that terrifying void, a new sound emerged, a faint, rhythmic crunching. It was the sound of footsteps on dry leaves, slow and deliberate, pacing us from just beyond the reach of our lights. We walked faster, our hearts pounding against our ribs. The footsteps matched our pace, never getting closer, never falling behind. Crunch. Crunch. It was a relentless metronome counting down our final moments. My father raised his rifle, swinging the beam of his flashlight wildly into the darkness. Nothing. Just endless rows of trees that looked like skeletal figures in the gloom. He shouted, his voice cracking, "Who's there? Show yourself." The only reply was silence. The footsteps had stopped. For a moment, we felt a wave of relief. Maybe it was just our frayed nerves. Maybe it was an animal that had been scared off, but the relief was short-lived. A smell hit us then, a putrid stench of rot and decay, so strong it made my eyes water. It was the smell of a forgotten grave, of old meat left to spoil in the sun. It clung to the air, thick and nauseating, and then I saw it. At the absolute edge of my grandfather's flashlight beam, something moved. It was tall, impossibly so. Its limbs were long and spindly, like the branches of a dead tree. Its skin was the color of ash, stretched taut over a skeletal frame. But its head was the stuff of nightmares. It was a bleached deer skull, the empty eye sockets staring into nothingness. Yet I felt its gaze pierce right through me. It just stood there, perfectly still, a grotesque statue carved from our deepest fears. It didn't make a sound. It didn't move a muscle. It just watched. My father, bless his brave soul, fired his rifle. The sound was deafening in the silence. The muzzle flashed a brief, violent star in the darkness. The creature didn't flinch. It didn't react at all. The bullet might as well have been a pebble thrown against a mountain. It just stood there, silent and menacing. We didn't wait to see what would happen next. We ran. We ran blindly through the woods, branches whipping at our faces, roots trying to trip us at every step. We didn't dare look back. The smell of decay followed us, a phantom presence at our heels. The silence was our pursuer. We burst out onto the main road like men escaping a tomb, gasping for air, our bodies trembling uncontrollably. We scrambled into our truck and peeled out of there, leaving a cloud of dust and our courage behind in the Turtle Mountains. We never spoke of what happened that night, not in detail. There were no words to truly describe the horror of that silent encounter. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls just right, I can still smell the rot. I can still see that deer skull head in the darkness. And I can still hear it, the crushing, deafening silence of a predator that doesn't need to roar to be the most terrifying thing in the world. People talk about the Wendigo scream, a sound that can freeze your blood. But what we encountered was worse. It was a being of pure, malevolent hunger that had no need for sound. Its very presence was a scream. It didn't chase us with guttural roars or mimic human voices to lure us in. It hunted us with silence, with an unnerving stillness that promised a slow, inevitable end. It let the forest die around it, and it let our own minds create the terror. We were never the hunters in those woods. From the moment we arrived, we were the prey. The Wendigo of Turtle Mountain didn't need to utter a single word to tell us that. Its silence said it all. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there. The Adirondack Mountains are beautiful, a sprawling wilderness of peaks and ancient forests. But some things that live in those shadows are anything but. My story begins not with a scream, but with a whisper, a name carried on the wind that shouldn't have been there. My name. It was late October, and my friend Liam and I were deep in the High Peaks wilderness, miles from any trail. We were experienced hikers, seeking the raw, untouched beauty of the backcountry before the first heavy snows. The air was crisp. The scent of pine and damp earth filled our lungs. By the third day, a strange quiet had settled over the woods. The usual chatter of squirrels and birds had vanished. All we could hear was the rustle of our own footsteps on the fallen leaves. That evening, as we sat by our dwindling fire, the temperature plummeted. The flames danced, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to writhe and twist among the trees. That's when I heard it first. A faint sound, like a dry branch, snapping. I dismissed it. Animals, I thought, but then came another sound, closer this time. It was a low whistle, a mournful tune that seemed to mock the silence of the forest. Liam heard it too. His eyes met mine across the fire, wide with a question I couldn't answer. We doused the fire, plunging ourselves into near-total darkness, hoping whatever it was would pass us by. We spent a sleepless night in our tent, listening. The whistling stopped, but a new sound began. A rhythmic, heavy scraping, as if something was dragging itself across the rocky ground just outside our camp. It circled us for hours, a relentless, predatory patrol. The air grew colder, so cold our breath turned to frost inside the tent. And with the cold came a smell. It was the smell of decay, of old meat left to rot, so overpowering it made my stomach churn. By dawn, the sounds had ceased. We packed our gear with frantic speed, our hands shaking. We didn't speak. We just knew we had to get out. As we broke down the tent, Liam pointed to a tall pine tree at the edge of our campsite. Carved into the bark, fresh and raw, was a crude spiral symbol. It hadn't been there the day before. A cold dread, colder than the morning air, washed over me. We started hiking, practically running, ignoring the compass and just heading east, towards where we hoped the nearest trail was. The forest felt different now. Hostile. The trees seemed to lean in, their branches like grasping fingers. Every shadow seemed to hold a lurking figure. We moved for what felt like hours, fueled by pure adrenaline, and then I heard it again. The whisper, it was my name spoken in a dry, rasping voice that sounded like dead leaves skittering across pavement. It was coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. It spun around my heart, hammering against my ribs. Nothing. Just the endless, silent trees. Liam grabbed my arm. "Don't listen," he hissed, his face pale. "Just keep moving." But the voice grew bolder. It started mimicking our own voices, twisting our words from earlier conversations. It called Liam's name in my voice, and my name in his. It was a cruel, psychological game, designed to break us, to turn us against each other. The sun began to dip below the peaks, painting the sky in hues of orange and blood red. We were lost, exhausted, and terrified. We stumbled into a small clearing and saw it. Propped against a large boulder was a deer skeleton, but it was wrong. The ribcage had been unnaturally pried open, and the bones were picked clean, scraped in a way no natural predator would. At the base of the boulder was another one of those spiral carvings. We weren't just lost, we were being herded. Panic finally shattered our composure. We ran. We crashed through underbrush, branches whipping at our faces. The scraping sound returned, right behind us now, impossibly fast. I risked a glance over my shoulder, and my world tilted on its axis. It was tall, impossibly so. A skeletal frame draped in gray, tight skin. Its limbs were too long, ending in jagged, yellowed claws. Its head was a deer's skull, but the empty eye sockets held a glowing, malevolent pinprick of light. It moved on two legs, a grotesque parody of a human, its joints cracking with each loping stride. The Wendigo, it wasn't just chasing us, it was toying with us. It would fall back, letting the silence stretch until we thought we were safe. Then the scraping and the whispers would start again, closer than before. It was enjoying our fear. As true darkness fell, we found a shallow cave, a small overhang and a rock face. We squeezed inside, trying to make ourselves as small as possible. We could hear it pacing outside, sniffing the air. The stench of rot was suffocating. Then it spoke. Its voice, a guttural mockery of human speech. "So hungry," it rasped, the sound vibrating through the rock. "So cold. Let me in. I know you're in there. I can smell your warmth. I can smell your fear." It started scratching at the rock, its claws screeching against the stone. Liam was sobbing quietly, his hands over his ears. The Wendigo began to call out to him, using his mother's voice, pleading for him to come out, telling him she was lost and cold. It was the most terrifying thing I have ever experienced. A monster that doesn't just want to kill you, it wants to devour your sanity first. I don't know how long we stayed in that cave. It felt like an eternity. The scratching finally stopped, and an unnerving silence returned. We waited, barely breathing, until the first hint of gray light filtered into the cave. We crawled out, stiff and half-frozen, and ran. We didn't look back. We ran until our lungs burned and our legs gave out. We eventually stumbled onto a marked trail, and a few hours later, we saw other hikers. We had never been so relieved to see another human being. We didn't tell them what happened. How could we? How do you explain that you were hunted by a myth? We made it back to our car and drove away without a word. The Adirondacks, once a place of beauty and escape, now hold a permanent terror in my mind. I still have nightmares. Sometimes, when the wind howls just right, I can hear a whisper on it. A dry, rasping voice calling my name. I know what's still out there, in the deep, cold woods, forever hungry, forever waiting. Some places are not meant for us, and some legends are not just stories. They're warnings. Thanks for listening. If you have your own chilling encounter you'd like to share, drop it in the comments. Stay safe out there, and don't forget to subscribe for more tailies from the shadows. The smoke was so thick it felt like swallowing ash. We'd been battling the blaze in Superior National Forests for 3 days straight, a hellscape of glowing red and suffocating gray. I'm Jake, the spotter for my crew. My job is to watch 4 shifts in the wind, for flare-ups, for anything that could trap us. But what I saw that evening wasn't in any training manual. The wind was howling from the west, pushing the fire and a tsunami of smoke eastward. Then, through my binoculars, I saw it. A shape, tall and gaunt, moving against the wind, directly into the thickest part of the smoke. I radioed my crew chief, Marcus. Chief, you're not gonna believe this. I've got a visual on something. Or someone. Walking into the fire line from the east. There was a crackle of static. Say again. Jake. Into the fire. That's impossible. The wind's pushing 100 clicks an hour. That way. I kept my eyes glued to the binoculars. The figure was skeletal, its limbs unnaturally long, moving with a jerky, disjointed gait. It wasn't a person. It couldn't be. It's not running, Marcus. It's strolling. And it's moving against the wind. Silence on the radio. The rest of the crew probably thought I was seeing things. A phantom born of exhaustion and smoke inhalation. But I knew what I saw. The figure disappeared into a wall of flame and smoke, and a chill that had nothing to do with the night air settled over me. We were deep in the North Woods, miles from any town, the kind of place where old legends are whispered around campfires. Legends of a creature born of endless winter and starvation. A thing that haunts the forests and mimics the human voice to lure you away. Later that night, huddled in our makeshift camp, the wind changed. It died down completely. The silence was more terrifying than the roar of the fire. That's when we heard it. A voice carried on the still, smoky air. It sounded like Sarah, one of our crew, who'd been airlifted out with burns that morning. "Help me," the voice whimpered. "I'm lost. Over here." We all froze. Marcus grabbed his radio. "Aeropiece, confirm status of evac crew member Sarah Jenkins." The reply was immediate and chilling. "Sarah Jenkins is secure at Duluth General, Chief." "Who is that on your channel?" The voice called out again, closer this time. "It's so cold. Please." It was a perfect imitation of Sarah's voice, but it was wrong. It was hollow, filled with a desperate hunger that made the hairs on my arms stand up. We grabbed our Pulaskis and axes, forming a tight circle, our headlamps cutting feeble beams into the oppressive dark. The smell of burning pine was now mixed with something else, something foul, like rotting meat left in the sun. The sound of snapping twigs circled us. Fast, too fast for any person or bear. It was calculating. It was hunting. One of the rookies, named Leo, started to panic. "We have to help her," he yelled, taking a step out of the circle. Marcus grabbed him, pulling him back. "That's not Sarah, son. Stay put." But the voice was persuasive, preying on our instincts to save one of our own. "Leo, why did you leave me?" It sobbed. Leo's face went pale. The sound wasn't just in the woods anymore. It was all around us, coming from every direction at once, a chorus of phantom Saras begging for help. Then we saw Italiano standing at the edge of the clearing, just beyond the reach of our headlamps, was the figure I'd seen in the smoke. It was taller than any man, and possibly thin. Its skin the color of ash and stretched tight over its bones. Its head was crowned with what looked like a deer's skull, antlers branching into the smoky sky. But its eyes, they glowed with a faint, predatory light, like embers in a dying fire. It opened a mouth filled with needle-like teeth, and Sarah's voice came out, distorted and guttural. It took a step towards us, its long, clawed fingers flexing. The thing moved with an unnatural speed, a blur of gray and white against the dark trees. We heard a scream from our left flank. One of our crew, Dave, was gone, vanished into the darkness. There was no struggle, just a single, choked-off cry. The creature was toying with us, picking us off one by one. The mimicry started again, but this time, it was Dave's voice, a terrified, gurgling plea for help. that seemed to come from right behind me. I spun around, axe raised, but there was nothing there. Just trees and smoke. We knew we couldn't stay. Our only hope was to make a break for the emergency evac point, a rocky outcrop a mile east. Marcos yelled, "Move. Now, stick together and don't look back." We ran. We ran through the burning, blackened forest, the ground hot beneath our boots. The thing shadowed us the entire way. We could hear it crashing through the undergrowth. Its unnaturally long strides, Isley, keeping pace. It kept changing its voice. It was our loved ones, our wives, our kids, our parents, all begging us to stop, to wait, to come to them. It was a psychological war, designed to break us. "Toseparata," I could hear Leo sobbing as he ran, the phantom voices tearing him apart. The creature knew our names. It whispered them on the wind. "Jake! You're so slow. Jake." The voice was my father's, who'd passed away years ago. For a split second, I faltered, my heart seizing in my chest. That's what it wanted. A moment of hesitation was all it needed. I shook my head, forcing myself to keep moving. The image of those glowing eyes burned into my mind. We finally burst out of the tree line onto the rocky clearing. The evac chopper was already descending, its searchlight cutting through the smoke. We scrambled towards it, the roar of the rotors, a beautiful, life-saving sound. As I was being pulled up into the cabin, I looked back down. The figure of the Wendigo stood at the edge of the forest, motionless, watching us leave. Its head was tilted, as if curious. It had taken Dave, but it had let the rest of us go. It wasn't about the kill. It was about the fear. It was about tasting our terror. They listed Dave's cause of death as lost in the fire. The official report said I was suffering from smoke-induced hallucinations. They don't believe me, but every night, when I close my eyes, I see it. The tall, ashen figure moving against the wind. I hear the voices of my friends and family calling to me from the darkness. And I know the truth. Wildfires aren't the only thing that consumes the Northwoods. Something ancient and hungry still walks there, waiting in the smoke for its next meal. And it wears the faces and voices of those you love. If you're ever in those woods and you hear a familiar voice calling for help, ... Run. Run. And don't ever look back. Thanks for tuning in to another story. If you enjoyed this journey into the dark, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there, and until next time, keep your fire bright. The signal from weather station Delta went dead at 2:13 a.m. One moment, it was transmitting standard atmospheric data from the desolate forest tundra border of northern Manitoba. The next, just static. For 12 hours, the command center tried to re-establish contact. Nothing. A 3-man search and rescue team was dispatched by helicopter. The pilot, a veteran named Marcus, knew these lands. He'd seen strange things, but he never spoke of them. As they approached the coordinates, the station came into view. A small, fortified structure built to withstand the harshest Canadian winters. But something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The main security door, a slab of reinforced steel designed to open outward, was bent inward, hanging off its hinges like a broken jaw. It looked like a giant had punched its way through solid metal. The team, armed and on high alert, entered cautiously. The interior was a scene of pure chaos. Equipment was smashed, papers were strewn everywhere, and a thick, coppery smell hung in the air. On a shattered monitor, a single, frozen image remained. A grainy, distorted shape, impossibly tall and thin, with eyes that seemed to glow even in the black and white feed. The station's lone meteorologist, Dr. Alistair Finch, was nowhere to be found. The team spread out. One of the rescuers, a young guy named Liam, called out from the small living quarters. On the floor, next to an overturned bed, was Finch's journal. The last few entries were scrolled in a frantic, barely legible hand. The first of these entries, dated 3 days prior, was unsettling. The wind doesn't stop, Finch wrote. It sounds hungry, and it carries a voice, a whisper. It knows my name. The next day's entry was worse. Saw it last night, at the edge of the tree line. Tall. So tall. Its limbs were too long, its movements unnatural, like a broken branch swaying in a storm. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't human. It was just wrong. The local Cree legends call it the Wendigo, the spirit of the lonely places. I thought it was just a story. The final entry was just a few hours before the station went silent. The writing was a mess, stained with what looked like frozen condensation or tears. It's been circling the station for hours. I can hear its claws scraping against the metal. That sound, it's the sound of a fork scraping an empty plate. It's taunting me. The hunger. I can feel it through the walls. It's not just for flesh. It's a hunger for warmth, for life itself. The generator just sputtered out. The cold is seeping in, but the cold outside is nothing compared to the cold that's coming for me. It's no longer whispering my name. It's screaming it. Suddenly, a blood-curdling screech echoed from the woods outside, a sound that ripped through the silence of the tundra. It was a mix between a human scream and an animal's cry of agony. The rescue team froze, their blood turning to ice. Marcus, the pilot, spoke into his radio, his voice trembling. Get out of there. Now. Whatever was here, it's still here. They backed out of the station, weapons raised, eyes scanning the endless expanse of skeletal trees and snow. As they retreated toward the helicopter, Liam glanced back at the ruined doorway. For a split second, framed in the jagged opening, he saw it, a towering, emaciated figure, pale as bone, with antlers that seemed to tear at the sky. Its eyes were two burning coals in the encroaching twilight, and as the helicopter lifted off, leaving the dead station behind, they all heard it one last time, a faint, desolate whisper carried on the wind, a single, horrifying word that would haunt their dreams forever. Hungry. Dr. Alistair Finch was never found. The official report cited an animal attack, a freak polar bear incident. But the rescue team knew the truth. They knew that in the vast, empty north, some legends aren't just stories. They're waiting. They're patient. And they're always hungry. Every winter, when the wind howls and the nights grow long, old-timers in the remote towns of Manitoba will tell you to stay inside. They'll tell you to feed your fire and ignore the scratching at your door. Because the Wendigo walks, and once it knows your name, it will never stop hunting. The story of Delta 7 became a hushed, cautionary tale, a ghost story told by pilots and rangers. They say that sometimes, on a clear night, if you fly over those coordinates, you can see a single, faint light blinking in the darkness, but no one dares to get close enough to see what it is. No one wants to find out if something is still there, waiting in the cold, forever hungry. They say the wind in that part of the world still carries a voice, a desperate, fading whisper that sounds a lot like Dr. Finch, warning anyone who gets too close to turn back. But beneath that whisper, if you listen closely, you can hear another sound, a deeper, older sound. The sound of something that has been hungry for a very, very long time and has only just had a taste. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do unmiss our next descent into darkness. Stay safe out there. It started with a sound that didn't belong in the Boundary Waters. I've been coming to this wilderness my whole life. I know its language, the call of the loon, the whisper of wind through the pines, the gentle lapping of water against the canoe. But this was different. It was a guttural, scraping noise, like something heavy being dragged over rock and root. It came from just behind the small, isolated hut I'd rented for a week of solitude. At first, I dismissed it. A bear, maybe? Or a moose. The wilderness is full of large, noisy creatures. I told myself that, over and over, as the sun dipped below the tree line, painting the sky in shades of orange and blood red. That first night, the sounds grew bolder. The scraping was joined by a low, rhythmic tapping against the back wall of the hut. Tap, tap. It was methodical, deliberate, not the random fumblings of an animal. My heart started a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. I'd triple-checked the locks on the door and the shutters on the windows. But the thin wooden walls suddenly felt like paper. I turned up my lantern, trying to fill the small space with light, to push back the encroaching shadows. But the darkness outside seemed to press in, heavy and ancient. And through the rhythmic tapping, another sound began to emerge. A whisper carried on the wind. It was faint, distorted, like a radio tune between stations, but I could almost make out a word. My name. By the third day, I hadn't slept more than an hour at a time. The tapping was a constant companion. The whispers were clearer now, no longer just on the wind, but seemingly coming from right outside the wall. A dry, raspy voice calling my name, telling me to come out, telling me how hungry it was. The rational part of my brain was screaming. It was the isolation, the fatigue. I was hallucinating, but the primal fear, the cold dread that coiled in my stomach, knew better. I hadn't seen another soul since I'd paddled out here. The ranger station was a full day's journey away. I was utterly, completely alone, or so I had thought. That afternoon, I forced myself to go outside. I needed firewood, water. I couldn't just cower inside until I starved. With my hatchet clutched in my hand, my knuckles white, I crept around the side of the hut. The ground behind the cabin was disturbed. Deep gouges were scraped into the earth, and the moss was torn away, leading from the dense, dark woods to the back wall. And on the wall itself, at about 7 feet high, were long, paralleled scratch marks, splintering the wood. Something tall had been here. Something with claws. And then I saw it. Tucked into a crevice in the foundation, almost hidden, was a small, tattered piece of buckskin, tied with a string of sinew. It looked like a pouch, and from it dangled a single, yellowed tooth. An old charm. A warning. The stories my grandfather used to tell me, a mix of Ojibwe legend and campfire spooktales, came flooding back. He spoke of the boundary waters, of the deep, cold winters, and the starvation that could drive a person to madness, to unspeakable acts. He spoke of the Wendigo, a spirit of endless hunger, a gaunt, skeletal creature, impossibly tall, with skin stretched tight over its bones and eyes that burned like cold fire. A creature that could mimic human voices, luring you into the woods, preying on the isolated and the weak. He said you can't see it until it's too late. It moves between the trees, a shadow in your peripheral vision. You only hear it. The scraping of its claws, the whisper of your name on its foul breath. That night was the worst. The tapping stopped. The silence that followed was 1,000 times more terrifying. I sat in the center of the room, my back against the cold hearth, hatchet in my lap, eyes fixed on the door. Every creak of the wood, every rustle of leaves outside, sent a jolt of pure adrenaline through me. The moon rose, casting long, skeletal shadows of the trees across the floor. And then I heard the breathing, a slow, ragged inhale and exhale, right outside the window. It was a wet, congested sound, like the last breaths of a dying man. I didn't dare move. I didn't dare breathe. The doorknob began to jiggle, slowly at first, then more violently, the metal rattling in its housing. A low growl rumbled through the wood, a sound of pure, ravenous frustration. Something slammed against the door, hard enough to make the whole hut shake. The wood groaned, and I saw the frame begin to splinter. Another slam, and the top hinge tore loose. The door sagged inward, creating a dark, vertical gap. Through that gap, in the pale moonlight, I saw an eye. It wasn't human. It was large, sunken, and glowing with a faint, predatory luminescence. It stared, unblinking, into the hut, scanning the space. The air grew cold, a deep, unnatural chill that had nothing to do with the Minnesota night. The smell hit me then. A sickening stench of decay and frozen meat. The smell of the grave. The eye fixed on me. It knew I was there. The whispering started again. Not from outside, but right there, in the room with me. A chorus of voices inside my own head. Asked, so hungry, so cold. Let me in. Let me share my feast. I don't know what possessed me. It wasn't bravery. It was a final, desperate surge of survival instinct. I screamed, a raw, wordless sound, and hurled my lit lantern at the door. It shattered against the wood, and flaming oil splashed through the opening. There was a shriek, an unearthly, piercing sound of agony that was part human, part animal. It was a sound that split the night, and seemed to tear at the very fabric of reality. I saw a flash of a tall, emaciated figure recoiling from the flames, impossibly long limbs flailing as it scrambled back into the darkness. I didn't wait. I kicked open the shutter on the front window and scrambled out, falling hard under the pine needles. I didn't look back. Just ran. I ran through the woods, branches whipping at my face, ignoring the roots that tried to trip me. The shrieking followed me, echoing through the trees, a sound of rage and thwarted hunger. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out, until I reached the shore where my canoe was beached. I paddled all through the night, my arms screaming with every stroke. I didn't stop until I saw the rising sun and the familiar shape of the ranger station. I never told them the full story. What could I say? That I was hunted by a legend. They'd think I was crazy. They said I was suffering from exposure and dehydration. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. I can still feel the cold of its presence. I can still smell the decay. And sometimes, on cold, quiet nights, when the wind whispers through the trees, I can almost hear a voice, a dry, raspy voice, calling my name. The hunger of the Wendigo is patient, it is eternal, and it never, ever forgets. Thanks for listening, and if you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there. The old trapper, Silas, always said, never cross a frozen lake at night, especially when the winter winds howl like a hungry beast. I should have listened. My name is Alex, and I'm a wildlife photographer. My goal was to capture the elusive Arctic wolf on film, a creature as ghostly and beautiful as the northern lights themselves. That's what led me deep into the Canadian wilderness, miles from any town, with only my gear and a rented snowmobile for company. For days, I've been tracking a pack, their prints leading me further and further into the vast, white emptiness. I was running low on supplies, but the tracks were fresh. I could feel it. I was close. The trail led directly to the edge of a massive, frozen lake. It stretched 4 miles, a flat, white expanse under a bruised purple sky. Going around it would cost me a full day, maybe more. By then, the wolves would be long gone. My GPS showed a direct route across was only about 5 miles. A quick, 30-minute ride, tops. The ice was thick, at least 1.5 feet, solid as concrete. The decision seemed simple. I gunned the engine of the snowmobile, its roar shattering the profound silence. The machine glided onto the ice, and I felt a thrill of excitement. The sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of orange and pink. It was breathtakingly beautiful. I was about halfway across when the engine sputtered and died. Who's like that? I tried the ignition again and again. Nothing. The silence that rushed back in was heavier this time, more absolute. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Stranded. The word echoed in my mind. The temperature was dropping fast. My only option was to walk the remaining 2.5 miles. I grabbed my pack, my rifle, and started walking. The crunch of my boots the only sound in the universe. The sun dipped below the horizon, plunging the world into a deep, dark blue. The moon was a pale sliver, offering little light. I switched on my headlamp, its beam cutting a lonely path through the darkness. That's when I heard it for the first time. A sound, faint and rhythmic, that didn't belong. It was a soft, wet sound, a rhythmic breathing. I stopped dead in my tracks, my own breath catching in my throat. I scanned the darkness, my headlamp beam bouncing nervously across the endless ice. Nothing, just snow and shadows. I told myself it was the wind, my own heartbeat, my mind playing tricks on me in the oppressive silence. I started walking again, faster this time, but the sound grew louder. It was coming from beneath me. From under the ice, it was a deep guttural inhale, followed by a long, rattling exhale. It sounded impossibly large, ancient. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knelt down, pressing my ear against the frozen surface. The cold bit at my cheek, but I didn't care. The sound was clearer now, undeniable. It was the sound of lungs, massive lungs, drawing in and pushing out air right beneath my feet. And with each breath, I felt a faint, deep vibration through the soles of my boots. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through me. This wasn't possible. Nothing could live under 1.5 feet of solid ice in a frozen lake. Nothing. I scrambled to my feet and started to run. I didn't care about the wolves anymore. I just wanted off this cursed ice. The breathing followed me, keeping pace. A deep, resonant pulse from the black water below. I imagined something swimming beneath me, its gaze fixed on my shadow. Then I saw something else. Up ahead, in the beam of my headlamp, was a dark shape frozen into the ice. As I got closer, my blood ran cold. It was a deer. Its body was contorted, its eyes wide with a terror that even death hadn't erased. But that wasn't the most horrifying part. Its ribcage was torn open, but not by a wolf or a bear. It was splintered outwards, as if something from inside had burst free. I backed away slowly, my rifle feeling like a child's toy in my hands. The breathing under the ice was louder now, more excited, more hungry. It was directly beneath the deer. Then I heard a new sound, a crack. It started as a thin, spidery line near the deer's carcass and began racing across the ice, straight towards me. More cracks followed, branching out like a web. The deep, rhythmic breathing was now punctuated by the sharp, splintering sounds of the ice giving way. I ran with a desperation I've never known, my lungs burning, my legs screaming. The cracking sounds were all around me, a symphony of destruction. I didn't dare look back. I could feel the ice groaning and shifting under my feet. The breathing was a roar now, a sound of pure, primal hunger that vibrated through my entire skeleton. It felt like I was running on the chest of a waking giant. Ahead, I could finally see the dark line of the shore, the silhouettes of pine trees, a promise of solid ground. It was only 100 yards away. 50. 20. The breathing sound was right behind me, deafeningly loud. I could almost feel hot, foul air on the back of my neck. I threw myself forward, scrambling off the ice and onto the snowy bank, just as a huge section of the lake behind me gave way. With a sound like 1,000 windows shattering, the ice collapsed into the black water. I turned, my back pressed against a tree, and raised my headlamp. For a single, horrifying second, the beam illuminated what had been chasing me, rising from the dark. Churning water was ahead. It was gaunt, skeletal, with pale, tight skin stretched over a deer-like skull. Its eyes were sunken pits of blackness that burned with an ancient, malevolent intelligence. Its mouth, filled with needle-like teeth, was stretched into a grotesque grin. It was impossibly tall, its emaciated limbs unfolding from the water like a spider's legs. It was a creature born of starvation and cannibalism, the spirit of the lonely winter. A Wendigo. It let out a scream, not of an animal, but a twisted, human-like shriek that mimicked the sound of the wind, a sound of eternal, gnawing hunger. It took one long, bony step onto the remaining ice, its claws digging in, and then it was gone, melting back into the shadows of the forest on the other side of the lake, as if it had never been there at all. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even stop moving until I stumbled back into civilization 2 days later. Frostbitten and half-mad. They said I was lucky to be alive, a survivor of the brutal wilderness, but I know what I survived. I survived the thing that breathes under the ice, I never went back for my camera or the snowmobile. Some pictures aren't worth taking. And some legends, Some legends are hungry. So if you ever find yourself in the far north, and you hear the wind howling like a hungry beast, remember my story. Stay off the frozen lakes at night, because you never know what might be waiting and breathing just beneath your feet.